NASCAR celebrates its 75 greatest drivers this weekend at Darlington, and I'm honored to be joined by two of those men, in Jeff Burton and Dale Jarrett. So let's have some fun while celebrating NASCAR's history. And what we did is we divided NASCAR's 75 years into four different eras: 1949 to 1965, 1966 to 1980, 1981 to 99, and then the 2000s. And then we each picked one driver from each era for our all time Cup team. So I'll go with the Hall of Famer first, Dale Jarrett. Tell us who's on your team and why.
Wow, this was a lot of fun to look back and think about that. I'm the one that probably remembers more about these eras than anyone else, especially the beginning of this, being the oldest of this group. But when I looked at that first part, there are so many choices as this sport got its start. But I had to go with what I think, from my perspective, is the obvious choice. I stayed within my family. I put my dad, Ned Jarrett, as the driver that I felt like made an impact there. He won 2 championships and 50 races, really in about a 7-year span in the sport. And so I think that my dad did a tremendous job helping promote the sport at that time. But also, when you talk about Darlington, he did win the Southern 500 in 1965 by a margin of 14 laps. So I take that with there. So on to the next one. The next era I looked at a lot, but there's only one obvious choice there to me when you talk about Richard Petty. Won 7 championships during this time, from 66 to 1980. He's won 200 races. This is just kind of a no-doubter in my mind. And you talking about someone that moved the sport forward, the King, which he's aptly named, did all of that. Just incredible what he was able to do. He and his family-owned team and what they were able to accomplish. The next era, I think, was probably the toughest for me, or one of the toughest, in deciding exactly who. There were so many great drivers, as you talk about 1980 to 1999. There were so many choices that you could look at. But one man won 7 championships again, and that was Dale Earnhardt. And 3 times he won back-to-back championships. So this wasn't just spread out a lot. He was dominant through an important time there. Became the biggest name in the sport during that time, and had a lot of run-ins with a lot of the other greats that could have been put in this spot also. But then the 2000s take a lot of time here. A lot of people and drivers that accomplished a lot of things, but I had to put the other 7-time champion there at the top of my list with Jimmie Johnson, winning not only 7 championships, but 5 in a row, which will be something I don't think will ever happen again. Jimmie Johnson just became the face of this sport. Don't know that he ever got enough credit for everything that he accomplished, but those are my 4.
Yeah, those are great 4. And Dustin, mine look very similar. I start out with Ned Jarrett for different reasons than I think DJ did. For me, that was a little bit ahead of when I was watching racing. But when I did start watching racing, Ned Jarrett was the voice. He was the guy that I listened to. He was the guy that I felt like knew what was going on behind the scenes. I knew he had great success on the racetrack, but now off the racetrack, from a fan's perspective, he was the guy that was giving me the information, telling me what was going on. And he always represented the sport so well. I think he moved the sport forwards for so many people. Not just what he did on the racetrack, but what he did off the racetrack. Richard Petty is the obvious choice. However, I felt pretty good that somebody else was going to pick Richard, so I went Cale Yarborough in the next group, because for me personally, Cale was the guy that when he got out of the race car, you knew he had done a day's work. Like when you watched him drive, he could win at every kind of racetrack. He was just kind of the epitome of what a race car driver is: tough, hard-nosed, aggressive. I just thought he was, as far as driving, he was one of the sport's best, one of the best that we have ever seen. And clearly he's a Hall of Famer. But without a doubt, Richard Petty, he should be in there. But I just wanted to pick Cale. Earnhardt, man, he did so much for the sport. Again, not just what he did on the racetrack, but what he did off the racetrack. He was the face of this sport for a long time. He was willing to do things on the racetrack that a lot of other people weren't willing to do. His talent, I thought, was just, one of the top 2 ever in this sport as far as just talent. That guy could do almost anything behind a wheel, and he did so in such a way that he was unapologetic. He just went out there and he was himself, and the good, the bad, the ugly. That's what you got. And I think that a lot of drivers can learn from that. Like, we're not all perfect. Embrace it. Dale never claimed to be perfect, but he did claim to care and put intensity into it, and the results showed. And then I think perhaps one of the most underrated drivers in the sport's history, and Jimmie Johnson. Jimmie Johnson, 7-time champion. You hear all these things. Well, he didn't do this and he didn't do that. You know what he did do? He won 7 championships in a different set of rules every time. And that guy, again, one of the sport's best drivers, period, end of story as far as talent. He is again, he did it in a different way. Like, if you look at how Earnhardt did it versus how Jimmie Johnson did it, it couldn't be any more different. Jimmie Johnson wasn't the guy running over you, pushing you, moving you out of the way. He just was faster than you. And when you think about who his teammates were, he had to find more speed than Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon, one of the sport's greatest drivers ever. Jimmie Johnson was faster than Jeff Gordon. And Jeff Gordon wasn't slow. It's just Jimmie Johnson was next level greatness. So that's my 4. I'm proud of all of them. and we can argue about who we each picked. And Dustin, I think we might argue with your pick. I can't wait to hear them.
Yeah, I'm the oddball in the group, so I don't have any of the 4 that you have. So I guess that means I'm either all right or all wrong. So I will go in the early period. I'm going to go with Herb Thomas, 2-time champion. He had a 4-year run where he was first or second in the points. But what I also look at is he still owns the NASCAR record for the highest winning percentage in Cup at a little over 21%. That's a guy that's going to get me to the pay window, and that's an important thing. 1966 to 1980, I can't argue with the king that was picked, and also with Cale Yarborough, but I'm going David Pearson, 3-time champion, and that was a guy who did not run a full season many years. And for as great as he was, it makes you wonder even how great those battles with Petty would have been had they been racing more often, and racing for championships. Would Richard have won 7? Would David have won more? I think it would have been fascinating to watch. The 1981 to 1999 period, like Dale said, a lot of great people to consider. Obviously, Dale Earnhardt with the 7 championships, but I'm going with Jeff Gordon, 4 championships, 93 wins. And he was a driver for as much as Jeff talked about. Dale pushed the sport forward in a lot of directions. Jeff Gordon did it. He helped take NASCAR to the next level and beyond more of a regional sport, maybe even a bigger national sport than what it was. Got it on Saturday Night Live. So that's a guy that's going to be big has been big for the sport, be big for my team. And then the last one, look, again, I know you guys talk about Jimmie Johnson and can't argue with the 7 championships, 5 in a row, something we'll probably never see. But I'm going with Tony Stewart. I'm going to go with a fellow Hoosier and 3-time champion, a lot of success on the track. But also what I look at is, also racing in other series. He did the double in Indianapolis, and he's still racing now with drag racing. So he's going to be on my team, and we're going to go to a lot of different tracks, and we're going to have a lot of fun seeing him race in a lot of different things. So those are my 4. And again, it's just, look, I can't argue with what you guys had, but I think that, with you guys can probably argue with what I have to have on mine.
I don't think we can. I think you got to, there's so many choices here, great choices, and that's what's great about our sport.
Hi, I'm Parker Kligerman. For more access like this from Pit Road, be sure to click and subscribe to the Motorsports on NBC YouTube channel.